Hey everybody, how's it going? Thank you so much for coming to our session today to hear about how you can make your game available anywhere with Xbox Cloud Gaming. So just some quick intros here. Hey everybody, I'm Harrison Hoffman and I'm a Principal Product Manager for Cloud Apps and Devices at Xbox. Just some really quick history on me. I'm a lifelong gamer. My first gaming experience ever was when I discovered my dad's NES console when I was way too young, and it's just been over ever since then. You know, I got my first Xbox when I was in high school and had that kind of formative experience with Halo 2 and just playing multiplayer with everybody. And then in 2015, I had the privilege to be able to join the Xbox team, and I've been working on it for the last 10 years and working on cloud gaming since 2020. So just super excited to be here to share some of what we've done with y'all today. Jordan?
Thank you, Harrison. Good to see everybody here. So I'm Jordan Cohen. I'm a Principal Product Manager lead on the Cloud Platform Services team. I've been with Microsoft for about 17 years and with the cloud gaming team for about 7 years, and joined kind of in the early days of cloud gaming for us, building services to manage content, manage our cloud servers, get people connected to the right place and with the, at the right time when they want to play whatever game they want to play. So I'm really excited to be here and talk to you about Xbox Cloud Gaming. Just a brief reminder up front, you'll get a survey afterwards. We would love if you can fill that out, please. Anyway, with that, we'll get into the talk. So at Xbox, it's our mission to enable you to play the games you want, with the people you want, anywhere you want. And 6 years ago, my manager, Gus, was on this stage, or a stage like this at GDC, talking about Project xCloud at the time, and what we called it then. I still have the xCloud shirt. So at GDC 2019, Gus promised 3 things. That Xbox was going to deliver a platform that enables you to reach players around the world, that you can do so by writing your game one time and streaming it to any device. We would do the work to make it compatible with any device, and enable you to use your existing expertise, not learning how to create a new platform from scratch. So back at GDC 2019, we hadn't launched anything publicly yet. We were planning our first public preview for that fall. We were getting ready to figure out what kind of business model it should have and what content should it have. But we had no idea what was going to happen next. And so since then, we've learned quite a bit, and we wanted to talk about it here. And so today, what we'll be discussing is just a brief overview of the product, because we know not everybody is familiar with it. So what is Xbox Cloud Gaming? What can it let players do, and what are players actually doing with the platform? And how are people using it? And how are we continuing to improve the platform? Then we'll get to you, the game developers, and talk about what this means for you and how you can bring your game to Xbox Cloud Gaming and how you can best set your game up for success with the platform. So first up, I'll hand it back over to Harrison to talk about the product.
Thank you. All right, excellent. So thanks, Jordan. Now, everyone here is familiar with building games that run natively on consoles and PCs, and that really offers just a big opportunity to reach a wide swath of players around the world. And in this world, people need a gaming device with native gaming capabilities in order to play those games. And for Xbox, that means our consoles, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, as well as Windows 10 and 11 gaming PCs and handhelds. And now, we all know that it is getting more and more expensive every day to build games, and it's getting harder and harder to find growth out there. So I think that everyone in this room is looking for ways to reach more players and increase the return on investment that you've made when developing your game. So that's why, at Xbox, we've been investing in cloud gaming to unlock hundreds of millions of new devices and customers that your games can reach. Virtually any device with a browser, including iPhones, iPads, Androids, non-gaming PCs, Macs, Chromebooks, etc., can play via cloud gaming just by going to xbox.com/play. We've also partnered with companies like Samsung, Amazon, and Meta to bring the Xbox app to Samsung Smart TVs, Fire TV devices, and Meta Quest headsets. And we really work hand in hand with these companies to make sure that their platforms are fully optimized for cloud gaming, and that they meet our quality and experience standards so that we know that people are going to have a great time playing on these platforms. And finally, as we announced at CES this year, we're really excited to bring the Xbox app to LG Smart TVs later this year, adding even more devices where people can play via cloud. This really opens up a whole new world of gaming for people on the devices that they already own, making it as easy to stream a game as it is to stream a movie. And across all of these device types, in October through December of 2024, people streamed 140 million hours of games via Xbox Cloud Gaming. It was super, super exciting for us to see. And to make it as easy as possible to reach these players on these devices, years ago, we made the decision that we were going to stream console games because we knew that the moment that we're going to make developers make a different version of their game or call some special API or package their game differently or submit it through a different developer portal, all that was going to do was just going to restrict the number of games that we had available on cloud, and that's the opposite of what we wanted to do. So our number one goal as we were building out the platform for developers was to make sure that if you build a game for the Xbox console, then it will run great on Xbox Cloud Gaming. So, what cloud really does is unlock flexibility to play the way you want, anywhere you want. And every day, we see people playing across a variety of devices via the cloud. You can see the chart here on the right. This is a breakdown of the cloud gameplay hours on Game Pass for the month of December 2024 across all these different devices. And people are really playing everywhere. They're playing on Xbox One consoles, they're playing on smart TVs, Windows PCs, Series X and S, mobile, and other devices. And as we've seen cloud gaming grow over the years, we've really noticed a huge variety in the way that people are using it on different devices. And cloud gaming doesn't mean one thing for customers or developers. Like, it really enables that variety. So for current players, if you're a console or a PC player, it's additive to your experience. Like, it really enhances what you can do on that particular device, and it extends your gameplay to more devices than you've ever been able to play with before. If you're a new player, or maybe you're coming back after not playing for a while, we've noticed a lot of people coming to play either primarily or exclusively via the cloud, just due to the ease of access and the fact that it's already on the devices that they already have. So let's just take a look at a few of the use cases that we've noticed when people play on cloud. So with apps on leading TV platforms, we've made it easier than ever to play on the big screen without needing a console. Our browser-based experience on xbox.com/play, as I mentioned earlier, really extends the reach of all the way up to AAA gaming on non-gaming PCs, Macs, Chromebooks, phones, handhelds, and other devices. We've also seen a lot of interest on mobile and people wanting to bring their games with them on the go. Now, if you're a console or a PC player, there's a really great benefit to cloud, and that's that you can try a game streaming it via the cloud before you download it. And we know that game sizes are getting bigger and bigger, and it's a bigger decision for customers to decide, even if it's on Game Pass, like whether or not to try your game. And so being able to stream it via cloud, seeing if you like it, if you like the game or not, and then downloading it for a higher fidelity experience is something that we see happening all the time. And if you are on an Xbox One console, then you can actually stream Xbox Series X and S games directly to your console without the need to upgrade your hardware. So just opening up more games to more people. And as a result of all this flexibility, we're really seeing more people than ever playing across multiple devices. So what does it look like to play with Xbox for those multi-device players? So when you're playing with Xbox, your progress roams with you across cloud, console, and PC. So real quick story, this is a true story. Right before I was coming to GDC, the night before my trip, I was in my living room, kicking back on my couch and playing the fantastic new RPG from Obsidian, Avowed. It's a great game, vast world, interesting characters, lots of stuff to do in the game, and I was having a great time, and I was like, man, I can't believe that I'm not going to be able to play this game for an entire week while I'm down in San Francisco at GDC. Well, luckily, I didn't have to. So what I did was I broke out my Asus ROG Ally, which is a Windows-based PC gaming handheld, charged it up, got Avowed installed on that device, and then the next day when I was on the airplane down to San Francisco, I broke it out on the plane, and I'm sure a lot of you have the experience of playing with a handheld on a flight. The flight just totally flew by. I was able to pick up exactly where I had left off the night before on my console and just keep making progress. Then, when I got to my hotel here in San Francisco, the first thing I did was break out my Fire TV stick. And I actually travel with my Fire TV stick all the time now because what it lets me do is plug it into any hotel TV and just keep on streaming my games there from the cloud. So that's what I did. I plugged it into my TV, got it connected up to the internet, grabbed my controller out of my backpack, and then in just a few seconds, I was able to stream Avowed and just keep exploring the living lands and pick up exactly where I left off. So that's how Xbox gaming works across devices for me, and the cloud is a really important part of making that possible. Second, your games and add-on purchases come with you to all supported devices, meaning that if you buy something on your console, you'll have access to it everywhere that game is playable. So another game that I've been obsessed with lately is this game called Brotato. I don't know if anybody here has played it. Super fun. So whether I'm playing that game on my Series X, my Samsung Smart TV, my ROG Ally, the browser on my phone, I've purchased their Abyssal Terrors DLC, and that content is now available to me everywhere on all of these devices to play. And finally, playing with friends has been a core part of the Xbox experience for a long time now. And it's really been in our DNA since the early days of Xbox Live and when I got my first Xbox. So naturally, our Xbox community, including friends, multiplayer, and chats, are available anywhere that you play with Xbox. So while I'm on this trip, I can stay connected with my friends around the world by jumping into a quick match of Call of Duty Black Ops 6 right there on my Fire TV stick, streaming via the cloud. And this is all made possible when you play with Xbox across these devices, and this is the vision that we brought into the world. So, what can you actually play? When customers come into one of our apps or they go to their browser, they'll have access to a super diverse catalog of games. Now, you're probably all already familiar with Xbox Game Pass, which is our subscription service that gives you access to a catalog of hundreds of games, including day one releases that are available to stream via the cloud. It's super, super simple to play here. I just browse the catalog on any of my devices, pick a game, and I can start streaming it instantly. Now, sometimes you want to play games that are outside of the Game Pass catalog. So we've recently released the capability to purchase and play games that are not in the Game Pass catalog. And that's called Stream Your Own Game. Buy the game once and get access to it across devices, including cloud with your Game Pass membership. This has really extended my play of games like Baldur's Gate 3 and Cyberpunk 2077 as I get to play these across all my devices now. We've got a little bit more information a little bit later in the presentation on how you can get your games included in Stream Your Own Game, but this really just offers another way for you to make your games available via the cloud. And finally, cloud supports all of the same in-game content and purchases that are supported elsewhere. So whether players are buying your game expansions or your in-game currency, they'll be able to take that with them wherever they go. Now, a big part of offering that flexibility is having flexibility with the input type. And we really want to enable people to play the way that they want, anywhere they want. So these are console games that we're streaming. So obviously we support controllers, and not just Xbox controllers. We support virtually any Bluetooth-enabled controller that you have, including the ones that are made by PlayStation and Nintendo. And really, we just want to make it as easy as possible for you to pick up any controller that you might have around your house, or maybe you borrow one from a friend, and just grab it and start playing. To enable gameplay without a controller on phones and tablets, we also support touch controls, and whether that's through an overlay or through direct integration with your game's interface. Jordan is going to get into how to actually implement touch controls for your game to take advantage of this a little bit later in the talk. But I love playing games like Brotato or Minecraft Dungeons on the bus to work. Using those touch controls on my phone, I can just continue my progress there and just unlock more achievements. And finally, since we're always looking for to enable more ways to play, we launched support for mouse and keyboard on cloud last year. Now, if your console game supports mouse and keyboard, it should automatically work with cloud as well. And this is great for people who are playing on desktop PCs or laptops, Chromebooks, and whatever device you have where mouse and keyboard is the default input method. And all of this works across the 28 markets that Xbox Cloud Gaming is available today. This covers many of the biggest markets worldwide, and it's something we're looking to continue to build on in the future to offer your games to more and more players around the world. So let me hand it back to Jordan, and he'll talk through how we've addressed one of the biggest challenges with cloud gaming, latency.
Awesome. Thank you, Harrison. So he has all the fun stuff, and now I talk about the challenges. So let's talk about latency. And when many people think about cloud gaming, input latency is probably the first thing that comes to mind. How can it be possible? How can it feel good to play games? And we know it's not just a fast-paced shooter that can be negatively impacted by latency. It's even if you're playing a turn-based strategy game, if it has a virtual cursor and you're moving that cursor around with your gamepad, that can feel really bad with latency. So it's not just fast-paced games or slow-paced games. Any game can be negatively impacted by latency. So over the years, we've worked to develop a really careful, thoughtful, pragmatic approach to address this challenge. And that approach really requires that we deeply understand all of the different parts of the platform where latency can be introduced. So to really dig into latency, we should briefly discuss what's happening. Your game is running on custom-built Xbox console hardware deployed into Azure data centers, and your player is on their own device, maybe hundreds of miles away. The video needs to make it to the player, the input needs to make it back to the server, and that happens many, many times every second. And so the way we look at it is cloud gaming encompasses 4 steps. First, we capture and encode the data on the server, and that doesn't just include audio and video data, but it could include input data, like should your controller be rumbling with haptics, or are you in a party chat and you want to hear what your party is saying. Then all of that gets transferred over the internet. Your device, whether it's a small a phone or a big smart TV or even your Xbox console, receives that stream and decodes and renders that data. So all of the video gets displayed, all of the audio gets played, all of the party chat audio gets played, and maybe your controller starts rumbling. And then, of course, we take the user's input and send it all the way back to the server. And again, this cycle is happening ongoing upwards of 60 times per second. So throughout this process, input latency can be introduced at any part of this process. It's not just transport over the internet. First, every game, and the game developers in the room I'm sure know this, has its own input latency. Whether you're playing on a console or on a PC or on cloud, there's always some amount of input latency there just in your core game loop before the game does whatever it's supposed to do as a response to the user's input. Then it takes time to capture and encode. Not that much time, but it does take time to encode the video, encode the audio, and get it ready to send over the internet. Only after that process do we transmit the data over the internet. And thankfully, the speed of light is pretty fast, but even during transmit, things like packet loss can happen, and we need to retransmit the data again. And there's other challenges that we run into along the way. And then finally, the user's device needs to decode and render that data, which can take quite a long time depending on a number of different variables. And the thing about the decode and render phase is that, maybe the challenge is that we don't know what's going on at every part of the stack. We have plenty of our own analytics, and we can tell within our own platform code what's happening, where we're spending time, where the challenges and opportunities are. But for example, somebody might have a really cheap Bluetooth gamepad that they bought 10 years ago, and it doesn't perform very well. Or maybe they have a smartphone that has a touch screen that's slow to respond, which we've seen, maybe not recently, but older smartphones. Or maybe you're on a TV or a laptop with a really old LCD that's just kind of blurry and it responds slowly. all of these different elements can introduce latency. And all of these different variables are things that we cannot really measure. So since our own data can only tell us part of the story, we invented and invested in other ways to objectively understand how things are going. And so that brings us to testing and discovery. This process begins with hardware that we developed in-house that can simulate any input. So it can simulate mouse and keyboard input, touch control input, gamepad button input, and we connect that hardware to devices that we support, like TVs, tablets, smartphones, etc. And this enables us to measure the true click-to-eye latency. So what does the user actually experience, not just what is some code measuring? We deploy this hardware to a lab, and that lab has a very predictable and understandable network to minimize the number of variables that we're dealing with. We then have daily lab automation that runs on all of these different devices and scenarios and a variety of different game titles to let us measure the true impact of the platform pieces that we have the ability to improve. And then anytime new issues crop up, maybe a game rolled out a title update and that title update caused issues, or maybe we rolled out an OS code, an operating system code update, and that affected things in the data center, or somewhere along the way, we can get alerted to that automatically and immediately and begin the investigation, usually before anybody actually sees this, any customers actually see this. All right, so that's a lot about, testing and all of this, but what does it actually mean for you? With all of this testing infrastructure in place, we've really seen improvements across all 4 of these different segments of the pipeline. As a reminder, we have capture and encode, transport, decode and render, and input. I'll give you some examples. Back in 2022, I know it's a few years ago, but bear with me, we introduced a feature and announced it here at GDC called direct capture. This immediately eliminates 16 to 72 milliseconds of input latency, depending on the game. The way this feature works is that it circumvents hardware in our console servers related to HDMI. Now, of course, we don't need HDMI when we're streaming something over the internet and not connected to a TV, so we can skip that step. But the problem is that that caused compatibility issues with most games in the catalog at the time, so we could only enable it for a handful of games in the catalog. Well, over the last year or two, we've rolled out some significant enhancements to direct capture that enable that feature to work for almost every single game in the catalog. So while direct capture was introduced a few years ago, over the last couple of years, it has grown to support hundreds and hundreds of games in the catalog, and it's really noticeable by players. Another example is that after receiving some scattered reports from players on various devices, we added some of their devices to the lab, and we found that some old devices had a particular video decoder in them that did not like the way that we had configured the video codec to work on our end. So by having this automation in place in this lab where we can really nail down what's happening and where, we were able to address that particular problem for a smaller handful of devices. Another change is that we're moving more and more of our devices to use WebRTC instead of a different protocol we used to use. And WebRTC is an industry standard that pretty much everybody uses. And one of the features that it enables is a feature called forward error correction, and unreliable audio-video input. So unreliable audio-video input reduces latency by accepting more errors, but then we use forward error correction to address that and keep resiliency and overall quality high. So we kind of get the best of both worlds. We've also further optimized how we buffer the stream. Now, it's not a Netflix stream. We can't just go and buffer 10 seconds at a time, of course, but on the order of a small number of milliseconds, we are able to add an imperceptible amount of latency and smooth out the overall audio-video playback as a result. And most importantly, in many cases, as Harrison already mentioned, we work really closely with all of our device partners. This is to identify issues on our end, issues maybe in the devices that we're streaming to, but also investing in features like automatically enabling game mode on a TV so that the user doesn't need to poke around in their settings and do it for them. And game mode versus cinematic mode, even if you're playing on a console, it can make a huge difference. So I added numbers to all of these to kind of show where it lines up with all of these. And overall, it results in extremely noticeable improvements to end-to-end latency. I'm not going to share specific numbers because it is variable and different for everybody, but I believe it's to the point now where any cloud gaming skeptic, especially if you used Xbox Cloud Gaming 3 or 4 years ago, come back, try it again. I think you'll be pretty impressed. And then last but not least, we are continuing to invest in expanding the data center footprint where we have servers installed. So while over the network latency is not the only source, it is definitely a source. So by moving the servers closer to players, that improves their experience too. All right, so what does this all mean? We have the data, we have all the testing. Well, long story short, gamers are streaming everything with Xbox Cloud Gaming. We don't really see any differences between the top games on cloud and the top games on PC and the top games on console. We had our hypotheses that, well, maybe they're playing different games on all of these different endpoints, but really, they're all playing the same games. If a game is popular, it's probably going to be played everywhere. Even latency-sensitive genres like shooters are among the most popular games on cloud. And this doesn't just show up in the number of people playing, but the positive user feedback that we receive from players about their experience. We also looked at the differences between what kind of cloud endpoints they're using. So if you're streaming from the cloud, maybe people are playing different games when they're streaming to a desktop PC, or streaming to a smart TV, or streaming to their phone. Even still, it's the same top genres, almost identical. Now, maybe RPGs are a little bit more popular on mobile because you want to take a big role-playing game with you on the go, whereas sports games are a little bit more popular on larger TVs. I can kind of see where that makes sense. But long story short, even the fastest paced games, the most popular genres are the same across the board. So I want to leave you with one more thing. Last year, we brought Call of Duty to Xbox Cloud Gaming for the first time, and we were, a bit worried about it, a bit skeptical, like how well would it work? And when we first added Black Ops 6 to Cloud Gaming to test it out, I loaded it up. Activision had not lifted a finger, written a single line of code different to enable Black Ops 6 to work on Xbox Cloud Gaming. And when I loaded it up, I could not believe how well it performed. And I might be a little bit biased, but bear with me, you can try it for yourself. I tried it with a gamepad, I tried it with mouse and keyboard, and it felt pretty much native. Like I could go into a competitive match and do just as well as I can on my console, which isn't very good, but it still felt great to play. And so Activision spends a huge amount of time, every developer spends a huge amount of time optimizing their game to play as well as possible on as many devices as possible. And the last thing we want to do is get in their way. So we were pretty happy that Activision seems pretty happy and provided us with this quote. So Rulon from Infinity Ward says, Xbox Cloud Gaming has allowed us to open Call of Duty gameplay to a larger audience than ever before. Devices that were previously unable to realize the responsiveness and visual fidelity of a native application can now experience our signature fast-paced competitive gameplay. So thank you, Rulon. And I'll hand it back to Harrison to talk about the product experience.
Cool. Thank you, Jordan. So now that we've given you an overview of the service and talked a little bit about latency, I just want to show you how easy it is to get started with Xbox Cloud Gaming. So I'll be using some screenshots from our Smart TV app, which I've worked on, to walk you through that. So when somebody launches our app on a Smart TV, they may not know a lot about Xbox, they may not know a lot about Game Pass, they may not know a lot about cloud gaming, and so we take this opportunity to educate the customers a little bit, to tell them about our service, and to showcase a few popular games that we think will draw them in to be able to play. When you click to sign in or sign up, it's super easy to get started, and all you need to do is just scan the on-screen QR code with your phone, and then follow the instructions on your phone to get signed in with your Microsoft account. And then as soon as you finish that on your phone, you are automatically then signed in on your TV. Once you're signed in, we'll ask you to pair a controller in order to play. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we support a wide variety of Bluetooth controllers, including those from Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo. We just want you to pick up any controller that you can find to be able to get started. So all you have to do is just choose the type of controller that you're using here, And then we give you customized instructions for how to put that particular controller into pairing mode. So here are the instructions for Xbox. Here are the instructions if you have a PlayStation controller. And here are the instructions if you have a Nintendo Switch Pro controller. And so once you've put that controller into pairing mode, all you do is click pair. We'll scan the immediate area. And then as soon as we find that controller, it's just one click. And now that controller is paired directly to your TV. And the next time that you turn that controller on, it'll just automatically reconnect back to that device, just like you were playing on a console. So you're ready to go. And now you land on home for the first time. So this is the home screen of our app. And when you're here, if you've been playing previously on a console, a PC, or cloud, the first thing you'll notice is that all of your recently played games are just right here across the top of the screen. And this is super useful for people who are those multi-device players and they're switching between devices. And you can see all the games that are actually just playable right here. One note about our experience here, we have built this to be adaptive to whatever device you're accessing it on, whether it's through an app or through a website. Whether you're on a smart TV or a laptop or a tablet or a phone, we adjust the presentation of our experience here to fit that device, and we also adapt everything to your device's capabilities and what input methods are actually available to it. So what you have here is kind of a customized, personalized view of the experience that fits the situation that you're currently in. So from here, you can explore the app, you can take a look at all the games that we have available here, and you can just click to play anything. Now, if you click the Xbox button on your controller, then we'll bring up the Xbox guide. And so if you've been playing before on an Xbox console, this is probably pretty familiar to you, but this is where you go to access all sorts of things, either inside or outside of games in our experience, including your friends list, your chats, your profile, your notifications, your game invites, and all that good stuff. And of course, it wouldn't be an Xbox experience unless we brought achievements along for the ride. So here they are. You can view your progress with your achievements on any game, see what you've already unlocked, see what you need to work towards. And then if you unlock an achievement on cloud, it's automatically saved to your account, just like you'd unlocked it on a console or a PC. So now that I'm back here at home, let's say that I pick one of my favorite driving games of all time, Forza Horizon 5. So when I click through, this is the game details page. And the content here is all submitted and filled out by all of you, game developers and publishers. And this is where customers go to learn more about the game and try and see if they want to play it. So you can come here to see game trailers, screenshots, the description of the game, who the publisher is, who the developer is, when it was released, what the capabilities of it are, what the accessibility features are, so I know if this game is actually going to be inclusive for me. And then when I come back up to the top of the screen and I click the play button, this is really when the magic happens. And so what's happening right now is we're getting your cloud gaming session ready. We're finding the best data center for your situation, for your location. We're getting your Xbox server, your console in the cloud started up. We're loading up the game that you picked, in this case, Forza Horizon 5. And then just within a few seconds, here we are, right in the game. And this is just being streamed down from the cloud to your device in real time. And here I am playing Forza Horizon 5 completely via the cloud on a device that could never have run it natively. So now back to Jordan, and he will tell you more about how you can bring your game to cloud gaming and some of the optimizations that you can make to make it more successful there.
All right, thank you, Harrison. So next we wanted to talk about what it means to bring your game to Xbox Cloud Gaming. First, why should you want to join? Maybe we covered all of this, but just to briefly recap, you can enable your existing customers to take your experience with them on pretty much any device they already have. You can reach new players on devices like smart TVs that can't run games natively. But perhaps most importantly, most games just work without you lifting a finger. If you have a game already published for Xbox console, chances are it'll just work great on cloud. we do validate compatibility for every single game before we launch it. We have a large suite of tests and corner cases and others that we test just to be sure. But I think I can count on one hand the number of times a game actually had an issue that prevented it from working on Xbox Cloud Gaming. And most of the time, when we did encounter an issue, it was something we had to fix, not something the game developer had to fix. That said, while most games work great out of the box, we believe you can reach even more players if you optionally optimize your game to work better in cloud. The first way you can do that is maximize your reach with input flexibility. So Harrison already talked about all of the different types of input that we support. And yes, every game supports a gamepad, but not every customer has a gamepad. So we do recommend you look into adding mouse and keyboard support to your console game. This feature has been around for years. We're not sure if every developer is aware that it's available. And now the good news is that if you add mouse and keyboard support to your console game, it's basically just a pass-through for cloud, and it should just work on cloud. And then there's touch controls, which let players bring your game with you wherever they go. And maybe intuitively, but confirmed in our data, is that if you support mouse and keyboard, your game will likely be one of the most popular games that people play via desktop PCs on cloud. And if you support touch controls, your game will likely be one of the most popular games that people play when they're on the go. I wanted to dig a little bit more into touch controls. Now, we've talked about this at previous GDCs, but in case you missed it, a brief recap. First up is what we called native touch controls. In past GDC events and talks on YouTube, we've talked about how titles like Minecraft Dungeons elegantly blend touch control overlays with native touch. So when you're out in the world, as this GIF shows, you're using a touch overlay to move your character around. The team did awesome work to use custom looking buttons that are appropriate to every situation so that you know what every button is supposed to do. But when you go into your inventory, you can tap and drag things around directly rather than dealing with an overlay. When you pop up the social UI, you can drag the menu around and directly touch things instead of using an overlay to move a cursor around. Over the years, we've seen many more games start to use this method, and those are the games that we find that players are most happy with, elegantly blending native touch with touch overlays. For those of you who want to minimize changes to your console game's code, though, we do support overlays and have recently made it a lot easier to build them. So last year, the team launched a new extension for Visual Studio Code called the Touch Adaptation Kit Editor. This is freely available at aka.ms/git-tac-editor. We tried to make the URLs easy to remember, but we'll provide these resources after. And what this extension does is provide you with predefined templates to give you ideas on where to get started. It also gives you a live interactive preview of what the touch controls will look like, and it'll give you real-time feedback on those touch controls before you go and deploy those touch controls to a device to test it out. It really saves a lot of time. And it has rich IntelliSense support for English, Japanese, Korean, and Chinese. There's more resources available at the Microsoft Game Dev channel on YouTube, and bear with me, aka.ms/Xbox Game Streaming Documentation. Hopefully memorable enough. At that website, you can also explore other cloud-aware options available to developers. In past GDC talks, we've talked about these quite a bit and given some more examples, but just wanted to briefly recap them here. So again, if you go to Microsoft Game Dev at YouTube, you can find and search for cloud on that channel. You'll find a lot of examples. You can reach out to us on Discord by going to the MSFT Game Dev Discord channel. And here's some examples on how we recommend and how we've seen developers use these cloud-aware features over the last 5 years, 5-6 years. You can change touch overlay layouts depending on what's happening in your game. So instead of having one static layout, most games are better off if you have multiple layouts. So that if you're on foot, you see one layout and it's easy to walk around and look around. If you're in a car driving around, it switches to a different layout meant for that. Sometimes we've seen developers hide all of their overlay when you're in a cutscene, except for one button to skip the cutscene, but we hope people aren't pushing that. You can also natively integrate touch controls. The gyroscope on a phone can be used here, and you can do other things without overlays, like I showed in the animated GIF earlier. Gears 5 is a great example where they used all of these capabilities and made what's a pretty complicated shooter play very well on mobile using a combination of touch overlays and gyroscope. You can get data from data about the screen that your game is being streamed to so that you can adjust your UI to different screen sizes, whether it's a high DPI or low DPI density screen, or what is the aspect ratio, or what is the resolution of the screen that you're streaming to. And speaking of aspect ratio, while console games all render at 16:9 aspect ratio by default, we do provide the ability for you to understand the aspect ratio of the screen your game is being played on, and we provide recommendations for how you might change your game's render resolution to fit the full screen instead of being letterboxed. We also provide the ability for you to know how much network latency the user is facing and compensate for that latency in-game. Now, every game and every developer might want to use this information differently, but the ability is there if you find it might be useful for your players. And then finally, you can use cloud-aware code in your game to identify in your own game analytics when your game is being streamed and what kind of device it's being streamed to. So that way, you can discover your own insights. We don't know everything, and you know your game better than anyone. Well, you can connect information about the fact that your game is being streamed to your own analytics so that you can see for yourself how people are playing your game. So I'll provide one example to show how straightforward a lot of this is, and that's custom resolution. We've seen a number of games do this, including Hellblade 2. They did an awesome implementation of this, where they call a couple of APIs, and their game expands to use up the full screen rather than just rendering at 16:9. Three-step process to do this. First, you call X game streaming display details to get the details about the display that the game is being streamed to. This will tell you about what kind of screen the user is on, what is the DPI density, what is the resolution. Using that information, you can set your game's render resolution. And to ensure that your game performance isn't impacted, we provide recommendations that keep your game within the same rough pixel budget using preferred width and preferred height. But you can manually tweak it from there however you want. And then you set the stream resolution to match the game render resolution using X game streaming set resolution. That's it. Now you can call this API again when you detect that maybe the user's browser window has changed size, or they rotate their device from portrait to landscape. It's up to you. But once you do this three-step process, your game will be presented in a much more immersive way for your players. That's all from me. I'm going to hand it back to Harrison to talk about Stream Your Own Game.
Okay, one last thing to leave you with here today. So earlier I mentioned that we made it possible to purchase and play games from outside of the Game Pass catalog on cloud. And that feature is called Stream Your Own Game. And we've been bringing more and more games into this service in batches. So if you are interested in offering your game for purchase and play on cloud, then please either come and talk with us after the presentation or reach out to your ID at Xbox contact. If you're not currently in ID at Xbox, go to xbox.com/developers/ID in order to sign up. As Jordan mentioned earlier, we do validate compatibility for all titles that are coming into cloud, and we optionally provide you with a test environment for you to try it yourself so you can validate the quality and the experience and make sure that you're satisfied with that. So that's all that we have today. Thank you all so much for coming and attending our talk, for supporting us here. We are doing a live Q&A session in the South Hall at the Xbox Lobby Lounge just a little bit after this at 3:30 today. So we'd love to see you there. We'd love to hear your questions, to talk with you. So please come and stop by. And thank you all so much for coming today. Thanks.